Hello guys and welcome to the NPL minus power ranking with me, TurboBlaze IV, and my co-host.
What's up guys, I'm Richard and I'm happy to be here.
Both experienced power rankings, and we're going to be taking you through the power rankings every Wednesday. Now, before we get into this, there's something we need to explain before the video. Me and Richard did our power rankings slightly differently this week, where I took an approach where I looked at the team's games solely this week. I didn't look at their drafts from last week because we didn't do our power rankings last week, as some of you may notice. Whereas Richard, on the other hand, did something else. What did you do?
I actually took a little bit of a note of the drafts. I'm glad that we didn't have to make a full draft analysis video because I'm still a little bit new to the new generation and the Pokemon. I don't quite recognize all of them, but I did try my best to come up with the rankings just so that I could have something to base my Week 1 rankings off of those. So that's what I did.
And so that means our rankings are going to be slightly different. They're actually fairly similar considering, but there's a few discrepancies that will sort of look a bit odd, but that's because one is based on 2 weeks, whereas mine is based on 1. So in a couple of weeks, they'll sort of iron out. But both of us saying that, both of us have the same number 16. So how about you start off with the number 16?
Alright, so at number 16 we have the Scandinavian Stoutlands. They faced off in a match against the Gotham City Golurks, and it was a 4-0 loss for Scandinavian. And the thing that I want to say about kind of this whole week is I noticed that there was a lot of hacks this week. There's just so much hacks permeating these matches, more so than a lot of other weeks that I've seen in other leagues and whatnot. But such was the tale, especially in this game. There was a lot of misses for Skyrander, missing those 90 and 95% accurate moves. He kind of gave up, I guess, a little bit into the game. And you could see this, well, I could see this when I was watching the replay on Showdown. And in the chat, he was like, just want to get drunk and just want to end the game so that we can move on from this and whatever. So he was experiencing, to his credit, a lot of bad hacks. There's a turn where sorry, not a turn. There's a point where Torn, if it had switched in again, the Golurk's Tornadus would have died to rocks, and Nido Queen, I believe it was pretty low, and I think that Scandinavian could have forced a few switches and played the game a little bit closer than a 4-0, but just saying that he kind of gave up on it, it's not an attitude that you really want to have as a coach, especially in a league this competitive, because you always want to try to play it as close as possible. Differential matters, even if the hacks against you is so bad that you have no way of winning, which does happen. It is the game we play. It is Pokemon. There's still always things that you can do to try to pull the game a little bit closer, save yourself a little bit more differential points, especially in a league where in the minors league here we have 7 weeks rather than 12 weeks or more. So every game counts, and it was just kind of disappointing to see that attitude pop up here, that he just gives up and he's just going to finish up the game and not really play for any sort of differential. Just, yeah. So that's why I decided to put him at number 16. I'll probably put my preseason rankings in the description, but he was already at number 11 to begin with, so it wasn't a huge drop, but it was still, that attitude that caused me to put him way lower. So,
I mean, obviously, I completely agree with my co-host here at the moment. There's one point in the game though where Skyrander gave up very, very mid-game, and there's a point where I think it's turn 25. Torn switches in, and Skyrander misses a Leaf Storm of Superior. If he hits that Leaf Storm, Torn goes down, and then you look at the rest of Rob's team. Nidoqueen, Crawdonlaw that's slower, Slowbro that's slower, and Terrakion that's slower than Superior. A +2 Superior with Leaf Storm runs through that team, so he had no reason to completely doubt himself and his team at that point in the game. Okay, hacks hurts, but there's no need to give up. You've always got to play to the end, because he had a very good chance at the end of the game. It's just he didn't play very well at the start of the game, and that lost him so much momentum. I think Tapu Koko was exposed as well as it being not as good a pick as a lot of people think, although the coverage and the speed kind of make it a threat. Although there's one positive, he did use Guzzlord pretty well, which is always nice. And one that you don't see a lot. He's used pretty well. But I think that the problem with the Scandinavian Stoutlands is they try hard a bit too much in the early game, tried to make too many predictions that just didn't really make a lot of sense, and that lost him the game basically. And then a bit of hacks didn't help, and it probably didn't help his attitude. But on to number 15, my team. I have the AS Rowlet with Ashton Akai, Eric. Now this game against Daniki, the game was lost very much in the early game, which means that the late game Stone Edge crit, in my opinion, doesn't matter as much. Daniki had a extremely good tactic in baton passing special attack to his huge special attacking threats like Latios and Galvantula. Latios, once he got that +3 after the Calm Mind boost on the Protect with Sylveon, allowed Daniki to break down most of Eric's team and lost him a lot of the checks that he could have had in the late game. If Sylveon wasn't sacked to the Psyshock, or he didn't protect the turn the Latios hit Calm Mind, and he went for a more offensive play, I think Eric could have helped himself later in the game, and the Stone Edge miss then would have mattered a bit more. I think that if the Stone Edge is still hit, Daniki still had the pressure to win the game overall. So I kind of don't think that mattered as much. I think Eric needs to just work on his early game, because that's where he lost it. And in these sort of games, when you're playing against good opponents, you've got to be on top the entire game, which means that there's no early game step-ups. You can't be doing that. Otherwise, you will get swept by a Latios. When you've got a team with a Mega Lopunny, a Latios, and a Volcanion, I think having a Mesprit, he had a Mega Blastoise that he could have used. He had a Mesprit that didn't hit the field. He used this Sylveon rather passively, which kind of sucked, and that's why Daniki took the offensive momentum and went for it with a very high offensive team. But at your number 14, you have someone different. Oh, number 15, you have someone different.
I do have someone a little bit different at my number 15, which is at your number 14, I believe, the Toronto Staraptors. And for the Toronto Staraptors, I noticed that there were some points in the game where there could have been a little bit of a possible misplay on their end. For example, Umbreon not healing up, I think, could have cost them a really good defensive check to the Avalug's team. And to the Staraptors' credit, I guess, or I don't really know how to put that, but the Colorado Avalugs did, like I said in the beginning of the video, there was some hacks kind of permeating throughout the game. They did get some hacks, the Colorado Avalugs did, against the Toronto Staraptors, hacks in the Avalugs' favor. But again, you know, it's in a game that is multiple turns long. It's kind of hard to say whether or not that hacks matters, but I definitely think that there were some other things that, like, these Toronto Staraptors could have done a little bit differently. There was a misplay where I think Hippowdon did not click Rock Slide versus Mega Pinsir. I think that the Toronto Staraptors admitted after the game to having Rock Slide and should have clicked it against the Mega Pinsir, but they didn't. I think they went for Stealth Rock instead, perhaps expecting the Pinsir to switch out and therefore hit it back on the switch in. But at that point in the game, it probably would have made more sense just to go straight for the Rock Slide against it. So it ended up in a 4-0 win for the Colorado Avalugs, and basically what I have to say about that game.
That leads me on nicely, because my number 14 is in fact the Toronto Staraptors. You said a lot to do with the game. The reason I ranked Jar so low after week 1 is because I know Jar is a very good player, and he showed he was a very good player by the way he dealt with the Cresselia. Because as you see, he made no misplay when in terms of the every 50-50 that came up, he played impeccably. So Jar showed there that he is an amazing player, yet his prep was not as good as a player he is. He brought nothing that really stops the Rotom once Lati was gone. And okay, crits happen, and the hacks really sucked, but realistically, Rotom Wash completely checks his team once Lati was gone, and that kind of was what made me lower him. The prep wasn't there, unfortunately. Although he didn't really, I looked at his draft and he doesn't really have a lot for Rotom Wash, so he didn't really have a good matchup. But the fact that I've got Jar so low is because he played very well against the Crest, and he proved to everyone, as we already know, he's a very good player, but he disappointed in prep, and that's why he's number 14 for me. Your number 14 is someone different though.
My number 14 is actually your number 13, so we have these two teams, I guess, in the same order, just a little bit of a rank in between them at number 15, boosting yours up. But I have the Rotterdam Star Raptors, and this team was played against the Maine Red Clawitzers, which I believe got a Manaphy sweep, resulting in a 4-0 victory. I don't know that there's that much to say. I recall this not being as hexy of a match as the other ones, although I could be wrong about that. It was just a very solid setup with the Manaphy sweeping the Rotterdam Star Raptors quite a bit. And I mean, is there anything you have to add to this game?
Yeah, I mean, the Fries in this game, the reason I've got Fries slightly higher than Jar is because we know Jar's a good player. Fries is slightly more of an underground player. We haven't seen a lot of him as much, and he played some interesting strats this week. He did get swept by Manaphy, but everyone knows that Manaphy is one of the best mons in the format, so there's no shame in getting swept by Manaphy. Shout out to Shadi, and Shadi sweeps with Manaphy all the time. It's shout out to Under the Radar, who gets swept by Manaphy all the time, so that's always nice. But the thing that impressed me about Foghorn was his awesome Staraptor set, where he bought a physically defensive Staraptor, which really impressed me. It's really cool prep that came off. He did a lot of damage with the team there, but unfortunately he did leave himself open to a Manaphy sweep. The crit on the Electivire didn't really help him, but he didn't have many switch-ins to the fact that the one that crit him, so that kind of sucked on his favor. But I was quite impressed with Fries because I haven't seen a lot of him, and that's why I've got him one above Jar. Sorry about that, Jar. That's just the way it goes. The biggest discrepancy between our rankings is probably this next one, in the sense that I have the Bullet Plunge Club at number 12. Now remember, I ranked mine only on the fact of the week 1 games, the games that I watched. I didn't look at the drafts prior. So although Uzi has a very, very good team, and as you'll see in my co-host rankings, he's slightly higher because of this, but because I looked at only the game 1, Uzi got absolutely dunked on by Mono. Mono was in control of the game the entire time. Uzi really didn't have any sort of grip on the game. Mono was dictating everything. The only play that Uzi made that was somewhat of a very, very aggressive and gained him a bit of momentum play was when he tricked the Snorlax to stop it from completely cleaning his team, and even then it was just like a backup for the fact that Snorlax was going to run through him. He let Snorlax set up by playing a bit passively, and he played the Ments really badly around the rocks. He let it take too much damage on switching in and didn't deal with the rocks in itself. And the Ments set was largely ineffective, with it being special against a Mono's team which has a largely good special and physical wall. I mean, it wasn't going to be doing anything to the Snorlax if he'd bought a conventional Snorlax set, which is specially defensive. So I just wasn't very impressed with Uzi this week. I know he can do much better. I think that his team could have played better, but he could have built better against a very, very good team in Mono. Mono certainly got his revenge from the minus games. But your number 12 is someone completely different.
Yeah, and we actually skipped over my number 13.
Oh, sorry, that's my bad.
No, it's fine. No, it's totally fine. This is another point of discrepancy, though, between our ranks, because you have this team actually rated very, very high. I won't spoil it quite yet. But I have, at number 13, the Gotham City Golurks, and we already kind of covered this game. This was the match against Skyrander and the Scandinavian Stoutlands. I already covered what Skyrander kind of did wrong in that match, and we covered what the... we didn't really cover what the Gotham City Golurks did right, but I'll let you talk about that since they're higher up on your list. I'm just going to kind of quickly breeze through and explain that the reason that they are so low for me despite winning is that they started off in my preseason ranks at number 16. Wasn't a very big fan of the draft, and because of the fact that they beat another team that was previously in my bottom 8. Scandinavian Stoutland started off at rank 11 in my preseason ranks, and because of the fact that there were other people who lost and whatnot, it wasn't the most convincing win against an opponent who gave up halfway through. Mind you, that's not to say anything bad about the Gotham City Golurks, not to take anything away from their victory, just to say that those factors are why I don't have them up as high. But moving on to my number 12, the Portland Trail Blazekins, coached by Muse the Best. And this was a match against the Tampa Bay Frogadiers. And it was a 2-0 loss for the Trailblazers. This is another game where I don't think I recall any sort of particularly bad hacks. It was a pretty well played game, very closely played. Mew did have a bit of a mistake in his team building where he put, I believe, the wrong move on one of his mons. I don't quite recall what that mon is. Fortunately, it's been a couple days since I've seen the game, so if my knowledge is a bit lacking or a bit general on these games, because I didn't take too great. I don't think that mispreparation impacted the game all that much. It was just, a narrow loss against a really good opponent in Verd, the coach of the Tampa Bay Frogadiers. And so, that's basically all I have to say. Shall we move on to your number 11 now?
I have the Temple Rowlets against at number 11 for me. He played against Asta this week, and he competed well in the early game. Asta is a very, very good player, as we know. The Temple Bay Rowlets really competed well in the early game, except the fact that he did get some extremely big crits against his team, and that allowed that really put Asta behind. And he got swept by Agility Lucario in the end game. I don't think that's anything he could have done or could have prepped for. I think that's some brilliant prep on Asta's part. So I really think that he couldn't do anything about that. He had some fairly decent building and play with a really cool Hulucha set, which did a lot of damage to Asta's team. No item Hulucha was really nice, but Asta's building just completely invalidated that, and he knew he could take the hit from the +2 no item acrobatics 100%. So I don't think that Temple Rowlets deserved to come any higher, but they did compete well, which is why I've got the mid of the sort of around the sort of bottom middle of the draft. He did get swept by Lucario, but everyone knows Lucario is one of the biggest threats in draft format anyway, so that's why Temple Rowlets for me is at number 11.
Yeah. So I guess going on to my number 11 then, with the Anaheim Altarias, which you have a little bit, just a little bit up. So they played against the FC Poplio. I'm not sure what FC stands for, but the first thing that I noted, this was the first game that I looked at this week, and the first thing that I noted was that there was a decent bit of hacks on the side of the FC Poplio. Could I call it game-changing? Maybe. Could I call it crucial for the game, the outcome of the game? Probably not. I mean, it's always hard to say when hacks occurs whether or not it could have impacted the game as a whole. But I think that the score, playing it close to a 2-0 loss for the Altarias there, indicates that, even despite the hacks, there was still a chance for them to kind of come back in the game. And, other than that, it was just a very actually exciting match to watch, in my opinion. But no, that's about all I have to say. Is just that's kind of what I noticed immediately about this game. What kind of set the whole tone for the rest of my rankings. Just a lot of hacks. But turning it over to my co-host Turbo here for his rank number 10, which was my rank number 12, the Portland Trail Blazers. So if you want to say your thoughts about them in this game.
So you're talking about the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, the Portland Trail Blazers did get outplayed by Verd, very much so. In the early game, Verd played impeccably in the early game, and you can't take that away from him. He was completely getting outplayed, and that's not his fault. That is the fact that Verd was playing like an absolute god. There was literally absolutely nothing he could do to stop that from happening. However, he managed to see a turn to get set up with a Margiana, and the Margiana was in a position where Verd's team was very almost about to get swept, but Verd did get a crit. You said that there wasn't any game defying hacks. There was a bit of game defying hacks, although Verd could have gone and won the game 1-0 or 2-0, probably 1-0 depending on if the crit didn't happen. The Margiana was completely set up and was ready to sweep Verd's team. He got the crit, and it's not his fault, but it happens. It would have been tight in the end game, but Verd probably would have had the game in my opinion, which is why I've got him down there. But I've got him ranked at number 10 because he saw one turn in the entire game, even though he was getting completely outplayed, where he was able to set up with Margiana and do serious damage to Verd's team and turn a potential 6-0, 5-0 into a low 2-0, 1-0 potentially if the crit hadn't happened. So I think that's the only thing that's the reason I've got him up reasonably higher or higher than all the teams below, is because he took his opportunity and almost won the game. So props to him for getting outplayed, and that's the fact, not giving up. Skyrander gave up early in the game and he had a set up opportunity at the end game. Alright, he missed the Belief Storm, but you know, it could have happened. The Portland Trail Blazekins did this, so shout out to Moose the Best for that.
Yeah, definitely agree with all that you said there. So
it's up to you now. Number 10.
Number 10. My number 10 is the FC Poplio. Again, this was another case of a team that won but are still kind of low because of the fact that, well, like I said, there were some hacks involved in the game. There's some hacks involved in every game this week that could potentially be crucial. Potentially, again, because it's never good to say that hacks totally influences a game, unless it does. But the reason that they are still in the bottom 8 for me is because they started off at number 13 in my preseason ranks and jumped ahead because they won. So that there is some method to the madness of my ranks. If you win, you kind of move up. Although you'll see if you check the description where hopefully my preseason ranks should be posted. The Rotterdam Star Raptors and Toronto Star Raptors actually kept their ranks for things that we already covered. I'm not going to go into now, but yeah, not much to say on that game really. Again, because it's been a long time since I've seen it. Admittedly, I'll pick it up for next week and get more details on the games. Thank you to my co-host for covering me so far with that. But I guess we'll go up to number 9 so far with the main red Clawitzers, and at least that's what my number 9 is. His is a little bit different, but the reason that I have the main red Clawitzers at number 9 is again because they started off a little bit lower. But I was really impressed by the Manaphy sweep that they got. I already talked about that when I talked about the Rotterdam Star Raptors. But yeah, it was just a great opportunity they set up, and they swept, and that was the game. Nice 4-0 victory for them, so definitely well-deserved win. So.
And my number 10 is the Portland Trail, not the Portland Trail. My number 9, I've got the Alham Altarias. You cut out a minute, so I tried to save that. Shout out to that. But I'm the Alham Altarias. I've got the Alham Altarias and the FC Poplio at 8 and 9. At number 9, I've got the Altarias, obviously because they lost the game, but also because they would have won the game if they were ballsy enough to make the plays they needed to. So he needed to recover on his Milotic to have a chance of winning the game. There was a pretty even matchup. Both of the teams played very well, despite Magic's absolutely disgusting team with Sandforce Lando, Excadrill, and Mega Kang plus Mimikyu, which is like an interestingly cool offensive core. But yeah, the Anaheim Altarias didn't show what they did in the tryout tournament with making the plays that matter and that potentially could have won him the tryout tournament. Obviously didn't. In that game, and I think that if he'd recovered with his Milotic, the game at the end would have been slightly different. But you make those plays, and hacks hurt him slightly badly. And also shout out to the fact that this week Stunfisk has lost its first 2 games in both the minors and the majors, so shout out to that. That's not good. That's not good at all. But yeah, I might as well go 8 because it's the FC Poplio, it's their opponent. They won the game against a pretty hard matchup. The Altarias had a very balanced team that was hard for the Altarias to break. The Landorus role was a defining factor, so Landorus living on 1 HP was a very defining factor, but a role's a role, they happen, so that's a thing that, I mean, you just got to take into account on Pokemon. It's not a competitive game for a reason. A lot of people will say that, and that is because roles and RNG exist, so it was a defining factor in the game. But the Air Balloon Excadrill was a very solid prep on his part, and very cool considering the Dugtrio was a very likely Trapper set. So instead of bringing something like a Shed Shell, he brought Air Balloon, which is really cool. and he saw a good vision of the end game. He knew how to win with Mimikyu, and that's exactly what he did. So that's my number 8.
Nice. Yeah, loving the points that you bring up about these teams, things that I even, while I was watching the games kind of missed. You're very insightful in this. Hopefully I can learn from the master. But for my number 8, I have the Temple Rowlets. We already covered them. Well, Turbo already covered them at his number 11, but one thing that I wanted to point out about the game was, it's not really, I guess, adding too much to the commentary about the game, but a turn that I particularly liked in this game was the Z Kyurem Black. It did a corkscrew crash, which I believe is the steel move, Z move, on the Clefable, and the Clefable actually was carrying a Beery Berry, which brought it down from I think it was at full health to 20%, and it then returned fire with a Moonblast, and it actually crit the Kyurem Black, which I think was near full or full. I don't quite recall, but it ended up killing the Kyurem Black, and it was just an interesting turn of events. Just a lot of stuff happening all in quick succession there. But unfortunately, the Temple Rowlets did lose by 3 points in that game, and the reason that they are, again, in my top half is what we've been saying the whole time, the discrepancy in our rankings, the fact that I had them up at number 6 before and moved them down against some of the people who won in the top half. So I guess moving on to number 7, I have the AS Rowlet, the other Rowlet team, and see, they played the match against the Rosa Radenborg, and they lost. And though they lost in quite a big differential, a 5-0, they did lose to a sweep, and they lost to a decent opponent. And they did miss a chance to kind of make the game a little bit closer by missing the Stone Edge with Garchomp on Galvantula. So there was a little bit of hacks there that mattered, at least in terms of differential. And I had this team pretty high up at number 4 in my preseason ranking, so they deservedly dropped down. But now I think we'll go on to Turbo's number 7, and why don't you talk about the Colorado Avalogs?
My number 7 is the Colorado Avalogs. Is a fairly standard number 7. 7 is a great position in the power rankings. It's just outside the top 5, but solidly in the top 10. I think that's what this game represents. It literally represented very solid prep from Foghorn and very solid play, and that's all he needed to do. There was a few big 50-50s which he lost, which was unfortunate against the Umbreon, but it happens. That was Jar playing well. I've already explained that, but I mean, he prepped exactly how he needed to beat Jar's team, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, Jar not bringing offensive Entei really helped him, because Rotom Wash just walled the fuck out of him. But am I supposed to swear on this channel? I'm not even sure. Oh no, yeah, Burb does it all. Burb does it all the time, so it's fine. But
that makes it all okay.
Yeah, he literally, there was a few 50-50s, and he got a huge crit on the Latias, which helped him out a lot. But I mean, it's all a momentum gaining crit, and Jar couldn't come back from that, and that's what won him the game, and that's very, very standard. But so we'll go to the number 6, where I have the main red Clawitzes. So this is the Manaphy sweep, and that's pretty much a pretty standard Manaphy sweep. He saw his opportunity, he knew his win con, he set up with Manaphy, and he had all the coverage he needed to beat his entire team, which shows exactly, it's great prep. If he knows that Manaphy is his win con, he knows he's got 3 coverage moves, Stab, I think Energy Ball, and Hidden Power Fire, I believe, to take out all 3 of his mons. Plus Tail Glow, Manaphy does the job, Manaphy serves the sausage, Manaphy wins the game. And that's basically what he did. He got a bit of a crit on the Electivire, which obviously helped earlier on in the game, because that's one thing that would have taken a hit from Manaphy, even with its 3 coverage moves. I think at plus 2.5, it wouldn't have taken it very, very well, especially at the with the HP investment it had, but it still would have taken it, I think. Oh, would have definitely taken it. I would have definitely taken it if it wasn't set up, and it probably would have pressured him out. So that's why the crit maybe happened like that. But then you can argue that that Fry's had a lack of switching, so it doesn't really matter. It's just solid prep and solid play. So what's your number 6?
My number 6 is the Bullet Punch Club, which was the discrepancy that we already went over. We already talked about how uh, Uzi was kind of dominated by Mono in this match. I don't think there's really much more to add on that. And plus, we're kind of getting on in time. We want to keep this under 40 minutes. I think we're well on track with that, but just to be sure, we can skip over now, I guess, to our top five. And in this top five, we actually have two teams that are in the same position, two teams above them that we just have in reverse order, and then our top teams are switched. But I guess I'll start with the Montreal Hapsels at number 5, both of our number 5s. This was the game played against the Temple Rowlets, and I mean they pull off a victory. That's the important thing. 3-0. Like I said, there's some hacks, might have mattered, might not have, that play with the Zeke Iron Black and the whole Clefable thing and the Beery Berry. That was just I don't know what to say about this match, honestly. I feel like it was a more even match than the score. I mean, 3-0 is not bad. That's an average loss, but I feel like it was a little bit of a closer game than even the score showed. And could have, if Parker Kaylover, the coach of the Temple Rowlets, had gotten a bit luckier, he might have pulled out a closer match or possibly even won. But it's hard to say. And I'll let you say what you have to say about that game.
I mean, you're asking him to be luckier. That's a bit interesting, but you just got to credit. You got to credit Asta in this game. He played amazingly well in the end game. He knew Lucario had to just come in at this point because he was so down on the fact that he got crit twice. And this is again another example of don't give up when Hax is going against you, because Asta just lost huge threats on his team to Hax that he knew he could have taken. He knew the calcs off by heart, which shows great prep. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that he had to get Lucario in at that exact moment because it's the only time he could get an agility up. And he knew once Lucario was under an agility, his coverage swept the team. So it's great building, and even if Jar helped him a little bit, shout out to Jar because I told you that he's a good player. But nothing to take away from Asta. He played excellently in the end game, and he bounced back from crits and showed how if you think a game through and you know your strategy and you know your calcs, you'll do fine. So on to the top 4 now. The top 4 I have at number 4 Mono and the Tampa Bay Luxrays, as do you. As I've already said, the Luxrays had control of the game the entire time. I love the team he brought, including Reuniclus, Zide Dog 10%, his Snorlax set, which was Cash, and Tapu Bolo is just always a threat with the Mandibuzz as defensive cover. What really did it was the fact that he managed to just set up straight away with Snorlax, and then would have proceeded to kill his entire team if not the trick play, which was a very good play on his part. He cleaned the end game, and he had great end game management. The fact that he knew he had to keep rocks up, he sacked Mons when he needed to the Victini to make sure that he got the kills with the Zydog at the end of the game, because that's what Zydog does. It comes in and it cleans up. It's not here to take hits, it's not here to wall break, it is there to late game sweep, and that's exactly what he did. He used his offensive threats properly, and Mono is Mono. He's a GBA coach. He knows exactly what he's doing. He did disgusting things with the PPL Division 2, and I think he could be on the exact same path with the NPL minors. So watch out, coaches. Mono is back.
Right. And speaking of the GBA, I believe it was kind of funny watching the chat in the game at the point where Uzi tricked him, and he was like, "Oh wait, haven't I done that before?" And he actually did the same thing in one of his matches in the GBA, and Uzi took that and turned it against him, so that was interesting. But Mono still pulled it out. And just to go back to our rank 5s for a quick second, I may have written down the wrong team. Like I said, my notes on this are not very orderly, so I may have written down which team got the crits, didn't. So that's a little bit of my bad. Sorry. But I guess moving on to number 3, we have these in reverse order. Your number 2, my number 3. The Rosa Raiden board, coached by Danicki. And let's see, this was the one against the AS Rowlets. Again, not sure what the AS stands for. But yeah, I mean, this was Danicki brought a lot of really good threats to Nasty Pass with his Togekiss into the Galvantula. Ended up being the one that managed to break through most of the AS Rowlet team and eventually get the sweep. Was an unfortunate miss on the part of the Rowlet, not for their Garchomp not getting the Stone Edge off on the Galvantula. Ultimately, though, like you said before about the game, it probably would have only mattered in terms of differential, as Danicki did have a lot of mons to keep up the pressure, but still a solid win, taking nothing away from Danicki in the Rosa Radenborg. A nice 5-0 victory. I believe it was the highest differential game this week, so very nice. Props to that. Anything you'd like to add on them, or go to
I'll do my number
Tampa
3.
Bay?
So my number 3 is the Tampa Bay Frogadiers. Now, I don't take anything away from Verd. You mentioned earlier about the power rankings master, and that is certainly Verd himself. Verd, I said before, played absolutely impeccably in the early game, and if he played that way consistently and got the 6-0, I would have topped him. He would have topped the power rankings easily, without a doubt. The only thing is that he misplayed in the mid game, and that's why I've dropped him 3 places, because he was in such a good position and he lost it because of one turn. It just shows his video title was all it takes is one turn, and I think he just mucked up one turn, and it forced him to make some amazing plays to get back into the game, albeit the crit was huge. But he handled the Margiana, a mon that people in the NPL majors are very struggling to handle a lot, because the way Matty's using it, he handled it very well, which is credit to Verd himself. Didn't make my top 2 or top 1 purely because of that mid game, and I know for a fact he was so strong in the early game, it disappointed me a bit what happened in the mid game. But I know he'll see this and be like, I will get to next week. I will see these power rankings and I want to prove me wrong, and I want to encourage him to do that, because I really rate Verd as a battler, and he could be another threat to watch this season. But you've already mentioned the Rodenberg. That is my number 2. I went with Danicki this week because he just did what he needed to win the game. He got set up, he nuked his threats, and okay, hacks helped him a little bit, but his early game plan was excellent. I actually mocked Dan for the game against Eric, and he did exactly what he did in the mock against me in the actual game, so it proved he had a perfect game plan that worked exactly right, and he 5-0'd me as well in the mock. I'm not gassing myself here, am I? But he did the same thing. So what happened to Eric wasn't just a one-off. Like, Danicki had this planned, and that's what made it more impressive to me. But you've already spoken about Dan. Who's your number 2?
My number two is the Tampa Bay Frogadiers, and I mean, you already went into great detail about their match from both sides, so I don't have much to add. But I will say that the reason that they are my number 2 rather than any other position is because my number 1 and 2 teams actually stayed at number 1 and 2 from my preseason rankings, because both of these teams I just found really threatening. I really love these teams. And before I ordered the teams, I kind of gave them ratings out of 10, and these were the highest scoring teams, just very threatening. I love Verd's team, and I think that he managed to use it quite well in his match against Use the Best, and that leads into my number 1 team, the Colorado Avalogs, whose team by far I just was blown away by it. I mean, there's Infernape on it, Cresselia, Mega Pinsir is extremely threatening, Rotom Wash, Kyurem, it's just the regular Kyurem, but as a Z-Mon is super threatening. And he has a lot of threats on his team. Cortana is a pretty big threat. Mungus is just fat and does fat things. Klefki is a pretty decent Steel Fairy type, and that typing is really good. But we're not here to talk too much about the draft. I couldn't obviously move them down much. I mean, I could have moved a team perhaps above them, but I didn't move the Colorado Avalogs down any. For one thing, it was a commanding victory 4-0 against the Toronto Star Raptors. There was some potential crucial hacks in Fogg's favor, but overall I think the victory and the fact that his team is so threatening, then I think that they could have a really good season is why I've kept him at number 1. But your number 1 is a little different. So
yeah, this strongly reflects the difference in our power ranking styles for this week, because I ranked this solely on the battle and how the results went and how I thought it went. So I've got the Gotham City Golett at number 1, and that is just because of the way he played against Skyrender. Okay, Skyrender, we've already said maybe didn't play to the fullest of his abilities, but that doesn't take away, you can't take away from the way Gotham played. I didn't feel like it was fair to not reward Gotham for still getting a very, very good win. As I've already said, he could have lost the game switching in his Torn on that Leaf Storm that fortunately missed, and he was helped by hacks, but he just asserted control from the start of the game. He kept Tapu Koko at bay with a Golurk, which is like, what? This league just shows that ground types can check hidden power ice mons. I don't know what. Golurk did his job. He wants to further his mascot in league format, which is credit to him. And expect Rob keeps gassing. Right, Burb keeps gassing Rob up. So I've got him top of the power ranking. So Burb is going to be have a raging erection over Zazo and Rob. This like just two top of the power rankings. What? Like, that's crazy. But enough of Burb. We're talking about Rob here. Rob just asserted control of the game, and he just did what he needed to win. He made simple plays. He had some good prep with Assault Vest, Slowbro, and the fact that Mega Alakazam couldn't kill with a Psychic on the Torn instead of having Psy Shock. I think it just worked out in his favour. He brought the right team and he won the game, and that's why he's top of my power rankings. So if you enjoyed power rankings this week with me and Richard, every week on Wednesdays, make sure you tune in. If you've got any comments or issues or anything, any suggestions how we can improve this, how our narrations can improve, do you want it shorter, do you want it longer, what do you want us to talk about, make sure you hit the comments down below. Have you got anything to say, Richard?
I do not have anything to say, just thank you guys for watching, and
make sure you drop a sub to the NPL channel and follow the Miners Games, which uploaded, I believe, every Thursday. Joel, don't shout at me if I've got that wrong. Oh no, it's Trev. Trev's the commissioner. Bye.
Nice job. Nice job.